Hey, welcome to week 8 of Gridiron Gurus. I'm Travis Lazarczyk alongside Bill Stewart for the Kennebec Journal and Morning Sentinel. Week 8 is the last regular season week for most of the conferences in the state, with the exception of the Pine Tree Conference Class A, where it's not the last week. They've still got one more, but it certainly is the biggest with some huge games in the league. We'll start with what might be the biggest, up with first place up for grabs, with Brunswick at Lawrence.
Sure, and Brunswick comes in maybe in Lawrence's heads just a little bit. They've had some success up in Fairfield the last couple of years in the playoffs. So, with the Dragons come in, led by a real balanced attack. They've had a three-headed monster of sorts in that backfield this year. Keith Kitchens, Jordan Rysdom, and Dylan Walton, who, the coaching staff says is not quite 100%, has been nursing, an ankle injury for some part of the season, but he is running the ball and running it effectively, and the Dragons certainly can beat you in a number of ways.
Yeah, and like you said, they've beaten Lawrence at Kiesfield the last 2 years in the playoffs, so they're not scared of the huge crowd they're going to be playing in front of, the mystique, if you will, of Kiesfield. So they're certainly going to be ready to play. Lawrence fighting a little injury bug a little bit. They had Sean Carroll, their leading rusher in the PTCA actually, missed last week's game at Coney with nursing an injury. Twin brothers Jake and Josh Doolin were both out. Coach Hersom expects to get Sean Carroll back this week. Jake Doolin has been cleared to play. They're a little banged up. They know exactly what the Dragons present, though, in terms of a strong running attack, and they think they can match it.
Sure, this should be a great game. And also, Bangor is going to be playing at Messalonskee, and Travis, this is another big game with lots of playoff implications in this one.
Right. Bangor, another 6-1 team. They lost week 2 to Lawrence, but since then they've been rolling. This is a team that at the beginning of the year almost lost to Brunswick. Some turnovers by the Dragons helped to keep the Rams in it, and then they were able to pull it out. This team just keeps getting better and better all season. Cody Chapman has been really running the ball well for Bangor, as is Zeb Toole. Messalonskee, another team with a strong running attack. The Eagles are 5-2 with Corey McKenzie and Sam Dexter leading the way on the ground. It's really a must-win kind of situation for the Eagles. Coach Wes Littlefield said the other day that they're looking at this game against Bangor and next week's at Lawrence, both home games, as playoff games. The Eagles are 5-2, but really need to win out to ensure a playoff spot, because if they just win one or if they lose both, they've got a lot of different tiebreaker possibilities where they don't make the postseason.
Sure, we could be looking at a lot of coin flips, which
should
make
be
these
some coin flips
interesting.
in the PTCA.
So, and then moving on to the PTCB, another interesting showdown. Gardner's going to be playing in Turner against Levitt, the two-time defending PTCB champs. Gardner, as Alonzo Connor said, Levitt has really been the main rival for Gardner in the past couple of years, and unfortunately for the Tigers, it's been relatively one-sided. Levitt has won the last 4 meetings between the teams, including both games in the PTCB championship. And the Hornets are pretty much loaded this year. They've already made a statement with a victory over Mount Blue. They have a lot of weapons who can hurt you, and as Gardner coach Matt Burgess said, hey, if they can't get one guy going, they got a lot of other guys that they can get involved, and Jordan Hersom is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Jake Olette is a terrific running back. Ian Durgan, Sam Green, they have a lot of players who can really hurt you. So, and again for Gardner, it's really tried to diversify its offense a little bit. So Dennis Meehan has gotten more involved, and Levitt coach Mike Hathaway said this is a more balanced Gardner team than he's seen since Forrest Chadwick was the quarterback there.
Right. Another game in the PTCB. It's going to be on Saturday, Mount Blue at Waterville. The Cougars are going to have their eye on that Gardner-Levitt game because that could implicate where they go in the playoffs. But Mount Blue still hoping to maybe get one of those top 2 seeds if they win at Waterville. A team that kind of got back on track offensively last week with a big win over Morse. Isaiah Tracy had a huge game, rushing for a touchdown, receiving a touchdown, returning a punt for a touchdown, and returning a kick for a touchdown. So on a team full of weapons, he might be the biggest one the Cougars have. Waterville, they know they're going to the playoffs. They're 4-3. A win might not get them a home game in the first round, but either it could set them up for a favorable matchup in the first round.
Sure, and then moving on to the Camel Conference Western C, a pretty big game in Reedfield Friday night with Oak Hill going to Maranacook. It's a big game for both teams, but for slightly different reasons. Maranacook is already in the playoffs at 6-1. It's fighting it out with Trape and Winslow to try to get one of those home playoff games. So, a victory there could certainly, possibly lock that up.
Right.
For Oak Hill comes in 7th in Crabtree points. A victory would secure a playoff berth. They're not in right now. And a loss, they may not be knocked out. Thanks to a real strong strength of schedule, they could slip in. But this is a game that they would obviously like to have. So, this is obviously a big showdown.
Yeah. And in the LTC, a big game in our region is MCI hosting Dexter on Friday night. MCI at 3-4 is sitting right at the 7 and 8 spot for the LTC playoffs. A win gets them in. A loss doesn't necessarily knock them out like Oak Hill, but they would probably need some help. So a lot of good games this weekend. We'll see you next week when we talk about the first round of the playoffs and the final week of the PTCA. So for Bill Stewart, I'm Travis Wazarczyk. Enjoy the games.